I never should have gone out that night. I was restless, eager to clear my head, so I went for a walk along the wooded path behind my house. It was sunset, that strange, in-between time when the sky blazes orange, but the shadows beneath the trees stretch long and deep. I had walked this trail 100 times before, never giving much thought to the rustling leaves or the occasional snap of a twig, but that night the woods felt different. The air was colder than it should have been for early autumn, and there was an odd stillness, like the trees themselves were holding their breath. The usual evening sounds, crickets, birds, the distant hum of cars on the highway, were absent. The silence was thick, pressing against my ears like a heavy fog. Then I smelled it, a rancid, coppery scent, thick and suffocating. It was the stench of rot. My stomach clenched as I stepped forward, drawn by morbid curiosity or some unseen force. That's when I saw it. A man lay crumpled on the side of the trail, his body twisted at an unnatural angle, limbs splayed like a discarded marionette. His chest had been torn open, ribs gleaming in the fading light, his organs gone. His eyes stared up at the darkening sky, mouth frozen in a silent scream. Blood soaked the ground around him, already blackened by the shadows. I gasped, stumbling back, my heart slamming against my ribs. My mind screamed at me to run, to turn back the way I had come, but I was frozen, trapped in the awful gravity of the scene. Then I noticed something even worse. The man's legs. Chunks of flesh had been stripped away, exposing sinew and bone. The ragged wounds weren't clean, like those from a knife or an animal's bite. They were torn, shredded, as if something had gnawed at him. A low, wet sound broke the silence. A shuffling. Something was moving in the trees just beyond the corpse. I took a step back, my breath coming fast and shallow. My eyes darted through the gloom, scanning the dense thicket. The trees loomed like black sentinels, their skeletal branches reaching toward the darkening sky. And then I saw it, a figure hunched among the trees, impossibly tall, its limbs too long, too thin. It moved with a jerky, unnatural grace, shifting from tree to tree without a sound. Its skin was stretched tight over sharp bones, pale and mottled, almost translucent in the dim light. It had no lips, just a maw of jagged, yellowed teeth. Its eyes, sunken hollow pits, locked onto mine, and my blood turned to ice. It had been watching me. A strangled gasp escaped my throat. The thing cocked its head, as if studying me, deciding. Then it moved. Not toward me. Not yet. It loped forward, its long, bony fingers curling around the dead man's ankle. With a sickening crunch, it lifted him, as though he weighed nothing, dragging the lifeless body back into the trees. The spell broke. I turned and ran. Branches lashed at my face, my feet barely touching the ground. As I sprinted down the path, my breath came in ragged gasps, but I didn't dare slow down. I didn't dare look back. The trees blurred around me, the path stretching endlessly before me. My house, my safe, warm house, was too far, too far. A sound rose behind me, a wailing, guttural howl, so full of hunger it made my soul shrink inside me. It was close, too close. My lungs burned, my legs screamed, but I ran. The last sliver of sunlight vanished, swallowed by the night, and the woods behind me came alive with the sound of snapping bones. The sound sent a fresh surge of terror through me, my body moving on pure instinct. I didn't look back. I couldn't. The thing was there, in the dark, and I knew if I saw it again, if I met those hollow, starving eyes, I wouldn't be able to keep running. The The trees blurred around me as I tore down the path, lungs burning, legs shaking. My house was still so far away, but I could see the break in the trees ahead, the faint glow of my porch light flickering through the gaps. Safety. I just had to make it. A sharp, guttural breath rasped from behind me. Closer now. I could hear the crunch of something moving too fast through the underbrush, the snap of branches under something heavy yet horribly thin. It was gaining. I forced myself to go faster. The path sloped upward. My foot caught on a root. I pitched forward, barely managing to catch myself with my hands. A bolt of pain shot through my wrist, but I ignored it, scrambling to my feet. In that split second, I heard it move. It wasn't running anymore. It was crawling. The dry rustle of leaves, the creak of shifting joints, the slick, wet sound of something dragging itself forward. It was just behind me. A sob caught in my throat. I launched myself up the last stretch of the path, my porch now fully in view. My hands fumbled in my pocket, searching for my keys. Almost there. Almost there. Then, the air turned deathly still. The sounds behind me had stopped. I hesitated, one foot on the porch step, the keys clutched in my trembling fingers. The silence pressed against me, thick and suffocating. I could feel it, watching, waiting. Slowly, against every screaming instinct in my body, I turned my head. The trees were nothing but shadows now, black shapes, twisting in the dark, and just beyond them, two sunken eyes gleamed from the void. It was standing at the edge of the woods, just far enough to be hidden, but not far enough that I couldn't see it. Its head was tilted at that unnatural angle, its lipless mouth stretched wide in something that wasn't quite a grin. It didn't move. It didn't need to, because as I fumbled with the lock, my pulse hammering, I understood something horrifying. It had let me go, not because I had escaped, not because I was safe, but because it knew something I didn't, because now I had seen it, and now it knew where I lived.